Hi, everyone. Welcome to the You-est You podcast. This is Julie. I am your host, and I am really, really excited to introduce you to our guest today. You are in for a treat. This topic is so important, and let me first introduce you to Julia Poole. And let me tell you about Julia. Julia is the founder and CEO of Burnin Mindset. This is a consulting company whose mission is to advance the science and practice of educator and student well-being. Super important. She is also on the faculty at the University of Pennsylvania, Master of Applied Positive Psychology, the MAPP program. Julia completed her master's in education in Dominican University and her master's in Applied Positive Psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. Advised by Angela Duckworth, PhD, also the well-known author of Grit, and Claire Robertson Craft, PhD, Julia and Sophia Kokoris co-authored a study on the mindsets of exemplar teachers in urban education. This paper was recognized and there was distinction by the university, and it became an inspiration for founding of Burnin Mindset. Prior to founding Burnin Mindset, Julia worked in urban education for a decade, and she helped to lead the opening of 2 public charter schools. She's also been an instructional leader for Teach for America Summer Institute and an elementary and middle school teacher in the public and public charter schools in Los Angeles, Gary, Indiana, and Washington, D.C. Julie has received numerous national awards for her contributions to K-12 education, and she was also the 2013 DC Teacher of the Year. Julia now lives in New York City with her husband, and I am super excited to have you, Julia, on the show today and talk about this burn-in idea. I love it. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I am excited to be here. And love that we have a connection that your kids are being taught by a teacher that I used to work with. So I love that we have a wonderful teacher in common.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. As somebody who comes from a teaching, my mom was a music teacher for over 30 years, and just growing up with my parents were very involved in the public school system where I grew up in the Newton, Massachusetts area. And then obviously being involved in my kids' education, and their fantastic teacher, Daphne, who's a mutual friend. I'm a huge fan of, just what teachers go through, what the mission is. And I think what you're doing is absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you.
And you, as an esteemed educator, teacher, I'd love to get started. This show is about really being your best self, your You-est You. And curious, let's take a step back for a minute, Julia, just to let people know, how did you even get interested in teaching and education? What even got you on this path to begin with?
Yeah. So when I was in college, I read a book by Jonathan Kozol called Savage Inequalities, and it was about the educational injustices in our country. And at the same time, I was learning about Teach for America, and I sort of realized that the area in the world where I wanted to make an impact was in our schools, and I really wanted to be a part of a movement and a group of people that were working towards a similar goal, and was so grateful to be trained by Teach for America in how to teach, and then also the mindsets that really helped me believe in the power of our students and the power of and the potential of our school system.
And the name of the book again that you said that it was Savage, you said?
Savage Inequalities.
Savage Inequalities.
So it looks at different cities and the difference between the public school experience of 2 schools that are just 10 or 15 minutes away, and how too often your experience is dictated by your zip code, and there's such a difference between the level of resources and the ecosystems in which students grow up in. And we know from looking at the history of our country and what we've learned in psychology, that the environment and the quality of the education that you receive has a huge impact on your future.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's this is such an important topic, and I heard such amazing things about you from our mutual friend about what kind of teacher you were, and just reading through your bio, and clearly this is something that is of deep passion for you.
Yes, definitely. And when I started as a teacher, we were taught like the goal is 80% mastery, and for your kids to to meet the state standards in math and reading. But what I sort of became really focused on was building a really strong culture in my classroom where kids were excited about working with one another and cared about not only if they got the answer right on the exit ticket, but if their neighbor got it right, and getting really good at helping me get everybody on track. And knew what it was that motivated them, and how to motivate themselves. All of these skills became sort of my focus. And then I moved to DC and taught for a long time at schools that really believed in the importance of character education and academics.
Wow.
And so that, I would say, that has been when I think about how can our students be their You-est You, I wanted it to include not just academic success, but also the skills and habits that help them perform and also have a sense of well-being.
This is one of the reasons I am obsessed with what you're doing. Just even that, I want to come back to that, because I think what you talked about, this character education, I often feel like we live in a society that's so focused on competition. And I love what you're saying about collaboration, getting the whole group on board, your students on board to support one another, help one another. My belief is that starts really young, and it's often missing, although I know that that's something that you're helping to change. Come back to that, because that's a whole other, I have so many thoughts on that. I've thought a lot about, as I've done kind of research work on mindset, it's like, this needs to be in the schools, which it sounds like you were doing. Talk a little bit. So I want to just ask you, you went to get your master's degree in positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. And I'd love to hear about, I know you wrote this paper that was distinguished, and what were some of those key findings? Can you share in layman's term for those listening because many of our listeners either have kids or nieces and nephews, or just care, really care about our educational system and the future, and our children that are being brought up through that, and teachers and the well-being of our teachers. So curious, what got you into writing that paper, and then what were some of the findings that you could share?
Yeah, so I've always been really focused on teaching kids habits and character, and so much of the research that I was seeing in positive psychology was that the best way for our kids to learn these skills is through the modeling of adults. And so if you first believe, and research shows us this, that we can measure and grow our gratitude, that we can intentionally build grit, that we can identify our passion and have a growth mindset, then you want to start asking, okay, since we can define this and we can measure it, how can we build it? And at first I thought, oh, well, there's got to be the best program, or the best worksheet, or the best acronym for how to do these things. And I wanted to find the thing that we could use with kids. And I realized that it's through the modeling of our teachers that we can really influence the behaviors of our students. And things like a growth mindset, the way that a teacher responds when something goes wrong in the classroom is one of the best ways to teach resilience and how to keep going after something goes wrong. And so we started to think, okay, well, the starting point is teaching teachers how to internalize and practice these skills before thinking about how to teach them to kids. And one of the big barriers to teachers modeling these behaviors is burnout. And burnout is cynicism, emotional exhaustion, and a lack of self-efficacy. So when teachers are feeling burned out, they say things like, what's the point? I can't do it anymore. I'm like, today went bad. I'm a bad teacher. Or I just don't have the energy to do this work. And so I asked the question of, okay, well, what about the teachers who don't feel that way and who have the ability to keep teaching and keep going? How can we describe them? And so we looked for teachers who have stayed in the classroom for more than 5 years and who had been recognized as excellent. And we interviewed them and tried to learn about their mindsets. And so we looked for the opposite of burnout. And we defined burn-in as having energy, we define burn-in as having energy and having a high sense of self-efficacy and having optimism. And we found that the highest performing, longest lasting, happiest teachers experience burnout symptoms on a daily basis. But the difference is that they have more of the positive. So they have moments of cynicism, but they also intentionally cultivate optimism and find ways to have both and a surplus of the good. And then we uncovered some of the mindsets that support long-term performance and well-being in the classroom.
Oh, that's fantastic. So what I'm hearing is it's not that those who would be considered in the burning category don't have burnout feelings. It's that the ratio is more in the camp of burn-in, meaning you said energy, sense of self-efficacy, and optimism. So that outweighs it, which to me goes to that mindset piece. With the positive psychology, if we can take a step back, because I'm realizing there might be some people that's like, what's positive psychology? And I think you hit it and you touched upon it, but I thought it might be helpful to define it. I'm a huge fan. I've studied different versions of probably what you've done, but it sounded like maybe you can give a better definition, but I know growth mindset, that sense of your outlook, how you look at a situation, part of that is part of it. What else would you add for those who are like, ooh, what is positive psychology and how do I learn more? Because I think that to me has been the key, kind of the underpinnings of satisfaction in life and career and all.
Yeah, you nailed it. So traditional psychology or psychology as usual is often the study of what's wrong. So depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, alcoholism, and the focus in creating that field was really how can we create a common definition and set of symptoms to define these pathologies. And positive psychology is doing that, but applying the scientific method to look at what's right. So how can we study what makes life meaningful? How can we study the mindsets of people when they're at their best? And what are the ways of thinking and the way of acting that really support long-term happiness and well-being?
Beautiful. And so from that framework, that's where you got into, well, where can we make the biggest difference would be, to me, it sounds like with teachers, with creating that. I love what you said, because I'm thinking it really is a teachable moment when things don't go well in the classroom. You know, the way the teacher handles that, you mentioned that earlier, you know, that becomes, I mean, if they get flustered and get angry and thrown off, you know, they're off track, that can send a message, you know, that they can't handle turbulence versus, you know, how can we solve this together, or probably shifting gears and using it as a teachable moment, which is it's almost like another aspect of teaching. It's not the didactic teaching. It's more of a creating that mindset and culture. That's what I'm hearing you say with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, I love that. There are so many teachable moments to teach these skills. And I believe that they need to first be internalized and felt by the teacher.
Yeah.
And we have data to show that when teachers are experiencing and expressing symptoms of depression, their students have lower engagement and lower performance. And teaching profession is tied as one of the most stressful professions.
Yeah.
And 50% of teachers leave within the first 5 years.
Wow.
You know, the rate of depression in teachers is higher than in the general public by 2%.
Right.
And so we know that there's a rise in depression in our country in children.
Yeah.
And so one way to try to address that is to support the caregivers and the teachers who are helping to raise the next generation, because it does translate, and it's contagious. And I think another a more positive way of looking at that is that we know that we can shift our mindsets, and that we can practice gratitude by doing things like writing down 3 things you're grateful for every day. We can do things to treat depression, but we can also learn to be more optimistic. Right. And there are skills that can be taught in a didactic way, but I think most importantly, authentically represented in the classroom by the teacher.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm thinking back to what you said earlier with, the inequalities of different schools, but depending on zip code, how I would imagine in some areas, there's even more of a need for this. You probably see higher burnout rates in different types of schools, depending on I would imagine, on the way it's set up and the support. And so
definitely. Yeah. So there's a higher rate of teacher burnout in lower performing schools. And there are structural factors that contribute to burnout. So when the demand exceeds the resources.
Right.
And then there are also psychological behaviors that can be tweaked to address it. And so one starting point in our theory of change is that there are many things that we can do at a structural level and need to do. But in the meantime, we need to strengthen and support the teachers so that they can help create that change.
Absolutely.
And you're right. There is more burnout in certain schools based on external factors, based on the culture, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And there are also schools that are exemplars that where teachers are performing at a really high level and they are really happy.
Yeah, the whole range. What would you say? What's the goal for your business, for Burnin mindset? For maybe talk a little bit about what you do, and then what's the vision? How you hope to really make change? Because I know that you have a big one.
Yes. So I partner with schools that are really committed to teaching their students how to be well and their staff. And so I work with principals who want to promote well-being, and principals who want to make sure that they are investing in their teachers. And typically I work with the principal one-on-one, and we talk about the research, and then we practice together the skills. And then I work with 5 of the teacher leaders at the school. And the goal is to help create a common language at the school, and an accountability system so that the teachers are supporting each other in using their strengths, in building positive emotions, in responding to stressful situations in a helpful way, and being each other's support system so that they can sort of spread the magic.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know that I'm like, so many questions. I'm going to stick with one. We'll come back to, I want to talk about some of those skills, and maybe for those listening, if you're a parent or you are around children or you're a teacher, actually, let's go to that now. Would you be willing to share some of those skills that you do teach that maybe could be a takeaway for those listening? If you're dealing with children of any kind, probably could deal with it with anybody, but
yeah,
let's talk about that.
Definitely. So it starts with you being your You-est You, right? So
Right.
this applies to anyone who's listening. There is a test that you can take called the VIA, and I'll share the link with you.
Yeah.
And just like traditional psychology started or has the DSM with a list of all of our pathologies, in positive psychology, we have a list of strengths. And if you log in, this is free. You can take the VIA. Have you taken it before?
Yeah, I love it. We in my master's degree program, we did it, and I thought it was so fantastic. I loved it because it's strength focused, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
What's one of your signature strengths?
One of my, well, it's interesting. One of mine was appreciation. I think it's beauty and excellence in all things.
Yeah.
I think positivity was up there. Love or positivity was like second. I did it about 7 years ago, but I remember like appreciating wisdom and
beautiful things and
yeah, and I'm very visual, so that kind of makes sense.
No, I can totally see that in you, just visiting your website and seeing it's visually so appealing, and your attention to detail is, and in your professionalism, which is an appreciation of excellence, is something that shines through with you.
Thank you.
So yeah, the goal is so you take this test and you get a ranking of how do you prioritize these 24 strengths. And the goal is to then build awareness in yourself of what does it mean, in what ways in your life, Julie, do you find yourself really appreciating beauty? Or how are you practicing love and also receiving love in your life? And then the next step is to spot it in others. So first, build awareness in yourself. Second, to spot it in others. And then third, to take action to intentionally build it into your daily experience. And so we so often think that teaching means telling someone how to improve. And we all have strengths that we can spot and grow and use even more, and use that to learn more about ourselves and where we truly feel value and add value. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, please. And then I'll share with you, but I want to hear what you're going to say, please.
Yeah. So when I get assigned to work with with a teacher one-on-one, one of the first things we do is called a positive introduction. So before the call, they take the VIA test and they send me their results. And then I say, okay, spend 5 minutes just talking. I'm just going to listen and tell me, why do you think appreciation of beauty and excellence came up first for you? Where did that come from in your childhood? How are you living into that now? And they talk for 5 minutes about what do they really value. And it's an incredible way to get to know them. And also it's a reminder for them to build their own self-awareness of what do I offer every day, and what do I look for? And then finally, we talk about how does this connect to your role as a teacher? And for example, last week I was talking with a teacher, and curiosity was her top strength. And she was like, oh, yes, like that is why I have always kept a library book on my desk since I started teaching 15 years ago, because I want my kids to know that I'm curious and I'm always learning something new. And that made her sort of realize that I have an opportunity to teach kids the thing that I care so deeply about. And that can be a great reminder and invigorating, and build your self-efficacy.
I love this conversation. And I think it's really interesting. I'm noticing, even for those tuning in, like, even if you're watching this, even watching you and talking about, since we've been talking about strengths, even myself being like, oh yeah, that's my favorite one. My energy shifted. I felt pretty positive to begin with, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I love that, and noticing the energy, you talked about that earlier around Burnin, is having more energy. And it's so fascinating. And I believe this as well. It's just the power of tuning into your strengths and to what you appreciate. It reminds me of what you appreciate appreciates. And so I love that you use that self-awareness, and then, as you said, spot in others. I love that, so you get it within yourself, find it within, and acknowledge within yourself, and then you spot in others, and then you said taking action. And to me, this makes so much sense, and it's revolutionary, and it's not like it's just a flipping the script rather than looking at what's not working. Where's the deficit? We're turning the conversation around. That's what you're doing. And I love that. We'll have the link to the VIA test. I think that's fantastic. What a great way to do it. And then anyone listening can do it for free. It's a fun conversation. I mean, it's a great dinner conversation. You can have everyone in your family or friends take it and then talk about, okay, what is your strength? And how can I, bring that to you or acknowledge that in you? I mean, that's a fun thing to look at.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you,
and it's even helpful with people you're having a hard time with. So if there's a coworker, a student that you're working with, we talk about, you don't have different values. You're prioritizing your values differently. So let's say I was working with you, and appreciation of beauty and excellence is not my number one strength. And you found yourself like really getting frustrated with a project we were working on together. One way is for you to think, I really appreciate excellence, and I feel like that need is not being met for me right now. And, but Julia's signature strength is love, and that's high for me too. How can I use that in this situation? Or make sure I'm delivering my message with lots of words of affirmation to ensure that we can work together. And that is a much different way of looking at it than, what's wrong with me? Why am I getting so frustrated working with her? And instead thinking like, well, one of the things I really value and look for in life is excellence. Yeah. And so it makes sense that I'm going to get frustrated in this situation.
Yeah. This reminds me, I'm also married like you, and we've talked about love languages, my husband and I, and for those listening, when you look at the ways that you feel love. And I think this is a great something, if you're with a partner, friends, like family dynamic system, it's a great tool to use. Like I could see he and I taking this, and I don't think he'd be surprised with mine. Just given how I am. But it'd be cool to know, I'm thinking like, it'd be cool to know his top, strengths or appreciations, and then learning to speak into that, to that person. And whether it's in the classroom, I'm thinking for those listening, not just, some people aren't teachers, but maybe it's maybe it's your team at work, maybe it's your community, maybe it's your church or temple or a team that you're coaching. Like this is a great tool. I mean, I think we can pull from this. You could use it anywhere in any system.
Absolutely. There's even ways that you can go on like a strengths-based date with your partner. So let's say your partner has a love of learning, where can you go where you're really going to learn something new together, maybe a museum, or before you go to a restaurant, like an Ethiopian restaurant together, what can you do to learn about the cuisine there together, or for you, like a visit to a museum and really immerse yourself in something beautiful. That's going to be way more important to you than, say, going to a comedy show for me, because humor is my lowest priority strength.
That's so great. What are your top couple? Maybe you could give a couple for people to hear some of the, you don't have to list all 24, but I think they're great because there's a range of them. I mean, I remember I was like, I like all of them. I love curiosity and learning and love and like all of them, but there's a whole range.
Yeah, no one ever dislikes their results. So I can see that. I'm good at that.
Yeah.
So my top are love, kindness, gratitude, perseverance, and judgment.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And some of the others that you can remember, what are some of the others that you could share with people?
Yeah, so there's humor, spirituality, appreciation of beauty and excellence, humility, honesty, curiosity, zest, prudence, self-regulation.
Oh, wow.
I think that's most of them.
That's so great. Thank you. And by the way, that was like totally not planned. And you just nailed that, Julia. That's awesome.
And if you go to the website, there's a video you can watch for each one. And if you go to the VIA website, and a lead researcher describing that particular strength, and then ideas and activities for how to boost it, because it's really important to remember that we can be intentional about these strengths and we can practice them and get better at them.
Love it. I love this conversation. I love that you are creating something so needed at the beginning of where, frankly, my kids, our children, whoever's listening, the children of the future are learning and shaping their way of thinking, their mindset. I mean, I hope and pray that this Burnin mindset becomes like, a national program that's used in all schools. Is that something you're moving towards, aiming for? I mean, I hope so. I would love my kids to have teachers, although their teachers are phenomenal. It would be cool if everyone went through this kind of training.
Yeah, well, I am loving working one-on-one with such exceptional teachers and sort of supporting our best and helping them burn in so that they can continue to teach. And I think we are learning to prioritize not just addressing depression, but also promoting well-being. And I think it's becoming more and more common that schools are trying to teach our kids not just to perform, but also to find meaning and happiness. And there's a lot of people doing this work. I feel, again, like I have joined a group of amazing people working all around the world who are focused on teaching well-being to educators.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh. Our whole school system, I mean, I could see this. As you know, I'm a huge fan of developing this kind of mindset. It's crucial. I think it's one of the most important things to just creating more wellness and well-being in general with everyone,
yeah.
Especially our teachers. I have I honor anyone out there listening, if you're in school systems or education. I mean, hats off to you. It's not always an easy job. It can be very rewarding and very super important. I always thank my children's teacher like 5 million times because they're the one. I mean, they're learning from me and from their father and others, and most of their time is in school. So I think what you're doing is so awesome. Julia, if people want to find you, we'll have this in the show notes, but what's the best website or way for them to find you and what you're doing?
Yeah, so they can go to burninmindset.com and learn a little bit more about the work that I'm doing and the schools that I'm already partnering with.
Awesome.
And I'm so excited to connect with amazing educators around the world.
Awesome. We'll have that in the show notes. I honor and acknowledge you. I think what you are up to. This is one of the reasons for everyone listening. When I talked to Julia, I was like, oh my gosh, we are coming from the same, positive psychology, growth mindset place, and I'm a huge fan of adding this into the school system. And I think what you are doing with Burnin mindset is so fantastic, and just really thrilled to support you in any way. And for those listening, check it out. We'll also have the link to the VIA strengths test that you can take. I know it's free, and it's a great tool to use whether you're in the school system or not. And just so appreciate you and what you're doing to create more optimism and energy and empowerment and a Burnin mindset. It's awesome.
Thank you so much.